She woke up that Tuesday morning and realized something that made her stomach drop. The man sleeping beside her, the father of her children, the person she'd promised forever to, had become a stranger living in her house. And the worst part? She couldn't remember exactly when it happened. It was 6:15 a.m. when Sarah's alarm went off. The same alarm that had been waking only her for the past 3 years. Next to her, Michael slept soundly, his breathing deep and unbothered. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar weight settle onto her chest. The weight of another day. Another day of doing everything alone while pretending she wasn't. She slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him. Not because she was being considerate, but because she'd learned that waking him early meant starting the day with his irritation, and she was already too tired for that. The house was still dark as she made her way downstairs. The kitchen light flickered on, revealing the aftermath of last night's dinner, dishes still in the sink because she'd been too exhausted to wash them after putting the kids to bed, helping with homework, signing permission slips, and packing tomorrow's lunches. Michael had been home. He'd eaten the dinner she cooked. Then he'd disappeared into his office for a work call that lasted until she was already asleep. This was her life now. And this morning, something about it felt different. Heavier. More final. Hello, friends. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from: United States, United Kingdom, Canada, or Jamaica. Tell us anywhere you're watching from and what time is it there. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. As Sarah stood in that kitchen, questions began forming in her mind. Questions she'd been pushing away for months, maybe years. When exactly did I become a single mother with a husband? When did he stop being my partner and start being another person I had to manage? She poured coffee, the sound of it filling her cup the only noise in the sleeping house. Upstairs, she could hear her 7-year-old daughter Emma starting to stir. Soon her 5-year-old son Jake would follow. The morning routine would begin, the routine she'd perfected alone. Get them dressed, make breakfast, pack backpacks, find lost shoes, brush tangled hair, mediate sibling arguments, all while Michael slept or got ready at his own pace, stepping into the chaos only when it was time to leave, often commenting on how stressful mornings were. But here's what made this morning different. Last night, something had happened. Something small that revealed something big. And Sarah couldn't stop replaying it in her mind. 6 years ago, Sarah had believed she was marrying her best friend. Michael was funny, ambitious, and attentive. He'd pursued her with intention, talked about building a life together, about being a team. She remembered their wedding vows, the way he'd looked at her and promised to be her partner in everything. When Emma was born, things were still good. Michael was excited, involved, present. He'd wake up for night feedings, change diapers, walk the floor with their crying baby while Sarah showered. She'd felt supported, loved, seen. But somewhere between Emma and Jake, between promotions and mortgages and the daily grind of life, something shifted. It happened so gradually that Sarah didn't notice at first. Michael started working later, started being less available, started treating home like a place to rest from his real life rather than the center of it. Sarah picked up the slack because that's what you do, right? You're a team. When one person is overwhelmed, the other steps up. Except Michael never stepped back in. The temporary became permanent. Her stepping up became the new normal, and somehow, without any conversation or agreement, she'd become the default parent, the manager of everything, the one who knew which kid needed new shoes, who had a dentist appointment, who was struggling with math, who wasn't sleeping well and why. Michael lived in the same house, but he'd become a guest in their family's life. Last night, Jake's teacher called. Their son was having trouble in school, acting out, not focusing. The teacher wanted to schedule a meeting with both parents to discuss strategies and possibly get him evaluated for attention issues. It was 7 p.m. when Sarah got the call. She was cleaning up from dinner while the kids played upstairs. Michael was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. She walked in and told him about the call. Told him they needed to figure out a time when they could both meet with the teacher. Michael didn't look up from his phone. He said, "Just schedule it whenever works. Let me know and I'll try to make it. Try to make it. Try to make it to a meeting about his own son's struggles." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. This isn't optional, Michael. Your son is struggling. The teacher wants both of us there. He finally looked up, annoyed. Sarah, I have a lot going on at work right now. You know that. Just handle it and fill me in later. Handle it. Like their child was a task on a to-do list. Like being a father was something you could delegate. She stood there, staring at this man who used to be her person, and realized she didn't recognize him anymore. Later that night, lying in bed next to him, Sarah couldn't sleep. The weight of it all pressed down on her. She wasn't just tired. She was tired of being tired. Tired of carrying everything. Tired of making excuses for why her husband was absent from his own life. And most of all, she was tired of pretending this was normal, that this was what marriage looked like, that she was okay. The next few weeks were the hardest of Sarah's life, not because anything dramatic happened, but because she started seeing clearly. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. She started noticing everything. How Michael would come home and ask, "What's for dinner?" like he was a guest, not someone who also lived there and could figure out dinner himself. How he'd play with the kids when he felt like it, but disappeared when they needed actual parenting, homework help, baths, bedtime routines, difficult conversations. How he kept his own schedule and commitments without ever checking if she needed support, but expected her to work around his plans, to always be available, to always manage everything. She tried talking to him. One night after the kids were asleep, she sat him down and said, "Michael, I need help. I can't do this alone anymore." He looked genuinely confused. "Do what alone? I'm here. I help." And that's when Sarah realized how differently they saw their life. In Michael's mind, he was helping. He went to work, paid bills, played with the kids sometimes, mowed the lawn on weekends. He couldn't see that Sarah was doing all of that plus managing every single detail of their children's lives, their household, their social obligations, their emotional well-being. He couldn't see it because he'd never had to think about it. She tried to explain, tried to list out everything she did, everything she managed, everything she carried mentally and emotionally. He got defensive, said she was exaggerating, said lots of dads work demanding jobs and their wives handle the home stuff. That's just how it works. Sarah felt herself getting smaller in that conversation, swallowing her own needs to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to not be seen as nagging or ungrateful. But something had shifted. She wasn't sure she could keep doing this. If you're still watching, drop a comment with "I'm still here" so we know who's writing this story with us. The revelation came on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. Sarah was at the grocery store with both kids, which was always chaotic. Emma wanted everything she saw, Jake was tired and whiny, and Sarah was trying to get through her list quickly. As she navigated the aisles, mentally calculating what they needed for the week, while managing two cranky children, she saw another family. A father and mother, shopping together with their two kids. She watched as the father naturally handled one child while the mother got items from the list. They were working together, seamlessly, like a team. And something inside Sarah broke. Not with jealousy, but with clarity. This is what she'd been missing. Not perfection, but partnership. She sat in her car after loading the groceries, kids buckled in the back, and let herself feel the full weight of her loneliness. And that's when the real revelation hit her. It wasn't just that Michael was absent. It was that she had trained him to be. Every time he did something wrong with the kids, and she'd redone it herself instead of letting him figure it out. Every time she'd managed everything to avoid conflict instead of insisting he step up. Every time she'd filled the gap instead of letting him feel the consequences of his absence. She'd been so afraid of what would happen if she stopped that she'd never actually let him see what she was carrying. But here's the truth she finally understood. She'd been protecting him from the reality of parenthood and partnership while drowning herself. And in trying to keep everything together, she'd enabled him to stay comfortable in his disconnection. The hardest truth of all, she couldn't change him, but she could stop carrying what wasn't hers to carry alone. Change didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen easily. Sarah stopped overfunctioning. When Michael asked what was for dinner, she started saying, "I don't know, what are you making?" When he complained he didn't know what the kids needed, she stopped filling in the information and said, "Figure it out. They're your kids too." It was uncomfortable. There were arguments. There were moments when things fell through the cracks because Sarah refused to catch them anymore. Jake was late to school twice because Michael forgot to set his alarm and Sarah didn't wake him. Emma ran out of her favorite snack because Michael didn't check before going to the store and Sarah didn't remind him. But something else happened too. Michael started feeling the weight of his own absence. Started realizing how much he didn't know about his own children's lives. Started understanding that Sarah hadn't been exaggerating, She'd been drowning. They went to counseling. It was hard, painful work. Michael had to face the fact that he'd checked out of his own family. Sarah had to face the fact that she'd allowed it because she was afraid of being seen as difficult or demanding. 6 months later, things were different. Not perfect, but different. Michael started actually parenting, not just playing dad when it was convenient. He started checking in, planning ahead, carrying mental load. Some days were better than others. Some days Sarah still felt the old patterns trying to creep back in. But she didn't go back to carrying everything alone. Because she finally understood something crucial. A relationship cannot be carried by one person without breaking them. And she was done breaking herself to keep everyone else comfortable. Sarah's story isn't unique. Somewhere right now, someone is lying awake next to their partner, feeling completely alone. Someone is managing everything while being told they're overreacting. Someone is realizing that they've been parenting their spouse along with their children. Have you ever felt alone in a relationship you were supposed to share? Have you ever carried the weight of a family while someone else lived obliviously in the same house? Would you stay quiet or finally speak? What would you do in Sarah's place? And here's the real question. If you saw yourself in this story, what are you going to do about it? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts. And if this story touched something deep inside you, stay with us. Subscribe for more real stories about love, truth, and the courage to choose yourself. Because the next story might feel even closer to home.